Audio here.
Oh, yeah?
Alright. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah? So an idea floating in my head is, as liberty-minded individuals, I talk about data mining, and I talk about how Samsung televisions are recording all your voice and stuff like that, and Google Home, and Amazon's Alexa and stuff like that are recording everything. It's like, how do we, kind of like square that with our own liberty-minded ideals and using technology and in the midst of knowing that a lot of it is being used for data mining.
So you're talking about the pros and cons?
Pros and cons, and also maybe like what services offer better risk-reward benefit, right? It's kind of like, just like I was telling you guys, I personally use Google. I personally use Google Drive and Google Storage for a lot of my stuff because they offer a lot of storage space up there. And we know for a long time, of course, that... sorry, I'm just pressing another button here.
It's okay.
That Gmail, of course, stores all of your mail and does data mining on it so that they can actually serve up ads to you, right? So, if that's the case, why would I put up with that? They make all their services accessible to do that. We have my, I could stop.
Get rid of that.
Yeah, it's probably hitting some type of,
I think it's a styrofoam.
my door. It's hitting my doors specifically.
Oh, the styrofoam was hitting the
I have
door.
to push it away from the door, basically. Yeah. So it's doing good. Yeah? Okay. Anyways, I think it's worth a treatment, and in talking about a movie and in talking about actually putting some legitimate content together, we have to figure out how we're going to use our knowledge to make our lives better in the future, obviously. And I think that can only be done with matching our knowledge against the technology that's coming up. Because whether we like it or not, the technology is just going to continue on. It doesn't mean that we have to use it in the same way other people do. We could use it in different ways, or better yet, use it to our advantage so that we make it better for our own lives. I think everybody wants to do that, though.
Well, but are we going too far forward?
Yeah, well, okay, so, there's, oh yeah, this thing is, that didn't do this. This didn't do it on the way up.
No,
Yeah, it likes this road a little bit coming back the other direction. Let me remember an example of something a while back.
Okay.
Where I put a line down. Was swiping your driver's license to buy alcohol. So I actually put my line down for that, okay? So I went into Target one time, and I was buying some wine for my wife, and they wanted me to say, "Can I have your ID, please?" And I don't give anybody my ID. I don't do it at Disneyland. I don't do it at Target. I show them my ID. Yes, here's my ID. I'm over 21. And they said, no, sir, I need to see your ID. And I said, are you going to swipe my card? And they said, yes, it's a new policy. And I said, I don't allow people to swipe my card, and I don't allow people to take my ID out of my hands. And that's where I drew the line. So they actually had to call a manager over, and the manager's like, oh my gosh, yes, of course, you can buy it. We know you're over 21. Thank you very much. So the little checker was just doing her job, of course. And but I guess the managers can override those decisions. But that's maybe something simple, but I personally feel that it's not so simple, right?
Yeah, that's a big deal right there.
Yeah, how about those we experienced just today, right? We were talking about
wait a minute,
self-checkout.
Yeah, right. Why don't they... Okay, so I could understand them wanting to see your card and to verify that your ID says you're 21. Why are they swiping it?
They say they're swiping the card because cards can be manipulated or counterfeited. So they swipe it for the code, you know, the magnetic code on the back.
Do we know where
to match it with what's on the face of the card?
Where does that swipe go?
Exactly.
Once they swipe it, where does it go?
That's correct. So that's the big problem I have, of course, right? So one of the stories that was put out a while back was about how when they swipe your information, the stores that subscribe to the service for if the card is valid or not are also sending the data to the Department of Justice, and which then of course gets processed by law enforcement agencies to determine, okay, is this person a wanted criminal or anything else, right? So you figure, oh, well, that must be a great thing, right? Because if a criminal is buying a pizza and law enforcement is notified that he's using a credit card or a known name or a known phone number of a felon, you want them to go get arrested, right? Well, wait, no. I mean, we're drawing a line somewhere there. We're crossing it, because when I order a pizza, I don't need my name to be pulled up in a database. If I just happen to be, my name is the same as some felon, I don't want the police knocking my door down and saying,
even them actually wasting their time on those false leads.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's, of course, it goes against taxpayer money, but, I mean, I absolutely don't want to get into a situation either for myself or anybody else where somebody has to make a decision of pulling their guns out and shooting at some unknown assailants coming through their door.
Based on faulty information.
Well, yeah, and then it turns out to be police, and then, of course, if police hear people trying to shoot at them, they're going to shoot back, and then all of a sudden it's a situation out of control. And we actually see this all the time. So a simple thing like swiping a card then turns into this crazy multi-domino situation down the road. So in my opinion, it doesn't take a lot of effort to really make a connection between a simple action and one getting out of control. You know, which could lead you into registering your credit card and or bank account with your driver's license, so that when you are at a gas station, you swipe your driver's license, because presumably you have your driver's license with you because you're in a car and you're buying gas, so that makes sense that you would have your driver's license. But then you swipe it, and since your card is registered to your driver's license, it can pay for your gas. Now, technically, the systems aren't really intertwined, because the credit card company is just simply taking your driver's license info and applying the match together. But how much effort would it take to actually keep track of all of your activity between swiping your driver's license and just swiping a random credit card, right?
Right.
So that all of a sudden, now you've got your driver's license attached with your credit card. Your driver's license, you would have presumably already had to have had a Social Security account because in order to get your driver's license, you have your Social Security stuff attached to it, or immigration papers, or whatever it happens to be. But whatever papers you have from residing in this country are going to be attached to your driver's license. So then all of this personal data is tracked, right? And that's where I kind of draw the line. I draw the line somewhere where it's the government is matching all these databases together. And we already know that the NSA does this. But it doesn't mean it's legal. And I certainly haven't authorized it. But I also have no way of preventing the NSA from doing what they're doing. I just know that I'm not going to willingly give over all that information to them. And I would think that someday when they're found out and atonement comes, that there's going to be a lot of data shredding at some point. That's what I think. I think that I think the NSA one of these days is going to atone for their actions, and they're going to have to go through and purge all that data off all their permanent systems. But we'll see if that ever happens. But
well,
so
even that purge would leave a trace, right? I mean,
well, maybe
there's really no. It's like once it's there, it's.
You'd think that it would probably be there forever, right?
Yeah, forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like Facebook and all these other companies all say that they keep your data pretty much permanently forever. Even if you close your account, Facebook still has all your data. But then again, those are private companies, so the difference here is, of course, private companies versus government versus law enforcement.
Right.
Having direct access to this data, right?
Right. That's pretty much like me give the way that you just said that is like me giving Facebook everything is the same as me giving you everything. You can do whatever you want with it.
Right.
Because I gave it to you.
Yep. But I didn't give permission to the government to take it, right? Nor did I give permission to law enforcement to get my information either.
Right.
So if law enforcement wants to have a warrant because they think that I'm somehow connected with, some type of criminal activity, well, that's a warrant, right? And presumably that should be going through some kind of a justice of the peace. There should be some kind of somebody doing accounting on it okay, is this guy really a criminal? Of course, we know that gets broken all the time, but at least there is a process for that. Yeah. Anyways, all of that to say that I think it's incredibly important that people think about where their line is, what they're willing to compromise and or give up their personal information on.
Make a left right here.
Because you're either going to do it on your schedule or you're going to do it on someone else's schedule.
Make a right here.
Is it?
Yeah.
That's not what this says.
Boy, if we're going back the same way that we came.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I don't know. They didn't want me to do that here. In fact, it wants me to make a U-turn now, dude.
No, because then you should go...
Which way do you want me to go?
Right up there.
You think so?
Yeah.
This is not, man. This is like Occidental Road.
This is the way that we came.
This is where we came, right?
Yeah, this is the
but
same
why
way we came.
it doesn't want me to do that right now, though?
I don't know.
Huh.
It's trying to take us a long way.
That's what my wife always says. But then it turns out there's like construction that has the road closed. That's what happened to us on the way back last night. Is that I told her, I said, well, it wants us to go all the way through 680. Oh, that's a long way around. I said, yeah, it's like 11 miles longer. And I said, well, it's shorter.
But you also have the searching network.
That's true.
So if it didn't say that, then I would say, okay.
Yeah, that's true. So then it turned out that, in fact, there was 2 main roads on our way back that were stuck because of construction.
Wow.
So it actually took us, get this.
The fastest way.
No, we never went the fastest way. We went the way she wanted to go, right? So it turned out that we actually got stuck for an extra 45 minutes over our initial estimate of time, right? So if we would have went the 11 extra miles, it would have saved us 45 minutes.
Oh, man.
So that's what weighs.
So I might have just cost us 45 minutes.
No. Probably not. No, probably not here. There's probably not construction on this road. But anyways, that's a very interesting conversation we just had, because that exactly is the type of situation I'm talking about. I leave my Waze connected phone on when I'm in the car, when I want to have GPS driving. But guess what? All of that information is being stored, collected, and then processed and given back to me by guess who? Google, right? So, and if you look into my Google account, you're going to find that Google has all of my location history. So once again, I have made this decision that is Google location history something that I want them to have of me? Well, I don't know. Where do I draw the line on that? Who can get the information? Well, pretty much anybody, right? I mean, if law enforcement has a warrant and they want to get my location history, I guess Google would just provide it to them because there would be a warrant out. And then what is law enforcement going to do with my location history? Well, presumably they would use it for whatever reason they think I'm a criminal about. And I don't know. What do I think about that? Well, I think that in general, I think that it's a little lame that we have to make these decisions. That law enforcement has the right to do that if they have all these warrants and stuff. But at the same time, I like using my smartphone. It makes my life.
You're all set. Drive safely.
There we go.
Very
all
funny
set,
that we just got back into 4G LTE connectivity here.
Now you're all set.
And so that's the trap. Making your life easier, handing over the information to third parties such as Google, which could eventually get handed over to the government, used to track you and trace you and data mine you. So then I hear about the NSA.
For 8 minutes to State Route 116.
NSA already does this, right? William Binney comes out as an internal NSA whistleblower and says, "Oh, all of your location history off the cell phone towers and your phone call records and any other publicly available information is already being fed into the NSA's thin thread and other programs." And so they're basically data mining you anyways. So then what do? Okay, well then you get a cell phone that's not a smartphone. No, your voice and your location are still being tracked because your cell phone, under contract with legal requirements, says that they're going to track your cell phone on all the cell towers anyways. So just with a simple cell phone, they're going to track you. Isn't that nice? I don't know, man.
Well, let me ask you this. In all of this stuff that we're talking about and all this, where does God come into play? And when I talk about God, of course, I'm talking about, the one true God.
Jehovah.
Christ,
of course.
Jesus Christ.
And
the God based on the Bible.
That's right. And so that is, in fact, where I draw the line for me and my family. Because I am trying to raise my family up in the knowledge of God as Christians, as going to church and doing activities, doing missions that honor God with my family and myself and my family. And so any of the stuff, the balloons, all of these individual topics that are out there that manipulate our lives, I have to kind of juggle and say, which of these is the most important for my family in relation to me, my kids, my family, which includes anything from my parents to, and then you match that with God and how we worship and how we deal with life. And it's true. So, is a self-checkout stand something that's going to inhibit my relationship with God? Well, if you get down to it, I already have to make a decision where our church, of all places, implemented a barcode cataloging system for its members. For everybody that uses the church's facilities, they request that you have an account with them, and every church member has an account basically, and they'll issue you a little keychain barcode, UPC code, that you can self-scan when you get to church. And if you're going to a service, or if you're going to one of their classes, they want you to register so that, of course, they know who's using which classes, and they can, of course, do data mining on you. What of our members is interested in which classes, and who goes to class and who goes to, regular church, and who uses the adult facilities, and of course it sounds great, and the church software companies that write this software are not in any means part of the beast system, as I can't imagine they are. Because at the end of the day, the church has to operate a business, and they have to know what their members are doing and where to put their money. If they find that a lot of their members are doing a course on Genesis, they might have to make a decision to offer more of those courses to keep their members coming back in order to, raise funds for, whatever they have to do for their nonprofit. So, once again, small little thing, scanning the barcode at church. I, personally, made a choice for our family that we won't be doing that. So, we actually don't have a barcode account. I actually went into church one day, this is a while back when they started the program, and I said, I would appreciate it, please, if you would delete not only our barcodes, but shred up my cards. And they did. They said, yes, we can do that. And so now when we show up at church, for the kids, they'll give them a little sticker for their shirt so they can log their visit into their class. And that's about the extent of what we do.
Which is a big difference, right?
Yeah,
Sticker on a shirt.
So the reason I drew the line there, quite frankly, was because I don't see any difference in me filling out a clipboard that asks me, okay, did you attend this class? My name is such and such. I attended this class at this time. And all the church is going to do is they're going to take that information and have somebody type it into their computer anyways. Okay? Because they ultimately want the same information. So I figure if somebody else is typing into a computer, hey, this guy's in this class, it's the same thing. But I do not want, and this is where the important thing is, I don't want my kids to get acclimated to using a barcode to register themselves for church. I always complain about the self-checkout stands when I'm with my kids. I make a point to ask questions in front of my kids to the checkout personnel about it. And I make a point to ask questions if they ask for my ID. I make a point to ask questions about that in front of my kids. I mean, if it was just me, I may or may not have a problem with it. I don't know. But once again, I want my kids to know, oh, Dad is making a point of asking a question about this.
Turn right on State Route 116.
or Dad is making a point about not having barcodes in church, Dad talks to us a lot about the beast system. Dad talks to us about chips in your hand, which every time my kids are with me, I will always make a comment to a checkout stand person about a chipped credit card. And they always say, do you have a chip in that card? And I said, no, I don't. And I plan on putting this card into a Faraday shield. And I use that term, by the way, on purpose because people always invariably ask me, what the hell is a Faraday shield? And I say, well, it blocks the RFID signal. And they say, oh, that's interesting. I never knew about that, or something. Or I get all kinds of things. I say, oh, that's smart. I never knew that. But I will always say, yeah, and you know what's going to happen in the future, right?
Street for 15 minutes to US 101 South.
Good Lord, high technology. Okay.
It's okay.
So I always say, and you know what's coming down the line, right? I said, you know, one of these days they're going to basically have a chip in our hands, and the chip in your hand is going to replace the chip in the credit card. And I will invariably get checkers that go, yeah, I know about that. Or you'll get a checker that goes, oh, that's crazy. And I said, you know, I sit there and I'll talk to a checker about the clubs in France and stuff that have all that already going on.
The clubs in France? What are the clubs in France?
Oh, there's dance clubs in like Paris that will accept a chipped hand. You can swipe your chipped arm. You know, basically they put chips in your hand, and you could use it to get into dance clubs. Because what they say is, well, if you don't want to worry about losing your credit card, losing any identifying information or anything like that, just chip your hand and you get access to all this information, clubs and whatnot, and you could charge your drinks to your card and the whole thing without ever having to worry about. And I'm like, what?
And they can't do that without a chip?
They can do it without a chip, but then you have to have your credit card with you, right?
Well, if that's a very creative way. To put a chip inside of a human being is not a very easy thing. It's a very creative way to accomplish their goal. I think if they're that creative, maybe they can think of creative ways that don't involve putting a chip inside of a human body.
Right? It's possible, absolutely. Of course, you know, biometrics and stuff does that, right? You know, taking your fingerprint or taking your palm print or your retina or something like that. But I also draw the line at that too.
So they can't think of a creative way for me to sign something that would accomplish that. I guess that would go back to the data mine.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much like your identity is your identity, right? So for a long time we use our signature. So the next thing that they came up with was two-factor identification, but you rarely see that for
it's the worst.
For signing checks or
so the best way is still cash.
Cash is still the best way, and of course they want to get rid of that, right? Because if you get rid of cash, then you kind of force people into the system, and which is also one of my lines. And I do tell my kids this exact same thing, which is the line that I draw is that day when they say, I could no longer use cash to buy something or sell something. That's when I draw the line. I say, I use credit cards. I don't have a problem with credit cards. I mean, in general, a credit card is a tool that I've been given. It's a financial tool. It allows me to walk around without as much cash in my pocket. But I will use cash in all of the areas that I can. I have a credit card / checking account which allows me to write checks, but it has to authorize who I am, and I do it online before I cash the check, for instance. So I purposefully did that because I want to draw the line at, you know, this whole credit system, where The only use that I've come up for credit in any recent numbers of years is when you rent a car. When you rent a car, it's really handy to have a real credit card, not a debit card, right? That's about it. But I found out a way. I mean, I've lived my life just fine without having to rent a car. So, you have to make a few choices here and there, but in general, I don't have to rent a car.
Well, is there any way to make it easier for people to use cash and to always make sure that we have cash on hand? Anything that we can do for that?
Huh. Well, I think that goes back to the whole mom and pop principle. If we turn our society into self-checkout lanes in box stores,
what if we
with automated cashiers and stuff like that, then that kind of nullifies that purpose, right? Where you don't have to have cash anymore. But if you instead make choices with society where you in fact want to have cash transactions, then we'll make those choices. But I think it takes a lot more than a philosophical movement.
No, you have to have it to where, okay, it's almost inconvenient for me to use my card, to use my credit card. This whole chip thing, it's kind of,
right.
It has a good chance. But even worst case, okay, swipe. Swiping it at a store or something. Let's say it swipes it and I get that cash or something. So instead of it swiping it and going to somewhere, or is that just the same, where it's like when you have that card swipe, what is the difference from me walking into a bank and taking out cash?
Well, of course, the big difference with that is that if you take out a small amount of cash, at least in today's banking requirements, if you take out a small amount of cash, and that usually means somewhere under $10,000, your withdrawal is not going to be logged specifically to the Homeland Security. And if you didn't know about it already, if you take out large sums of cash, which is around $10,000 or more, it could be any amount around $10,000. It could be $9,500, but if you do it regularly, or you deposit $9,500 regularly, you'll actually get reported to Homeland Security as a possible money laundering situation, or structuring, or something like that, which I think is just absolutely nuts. Of course, I draw the line there too, right? Which is your bank, of all places, is ratting you out to the government, to Homeland Security, for the very just function of you making withdrawals or deposits. And they say, well, it's to combat drugs. Well, is it a banking responsibility to combat drugs? I mean, who gave them the right to do that? Then you find out that it's really the banks in collusion with the government that has somehow now taken away all your rights of privacy in your transactions. And you're like, all right, well, this comes all the way back around to our original big topic, which is the Federal Reserve. I could go on for hours on that. Right. And so you go, what is the source of all of our problems? Well, it's this incessant need that we have to report all of our banking transactions. And that, to me, that's the sad part of the entire thing, is that my banking has to be tag, track, monitored, and data mined so that some agent somewhere gets notified that I might be structuring payments, and then what happens? Oh, well, they make a whole case about your structuring. They make a whole case and take thousands of hours of their time to make this court case and hand you to the grand jury, and then by the time it gets spit out on the other end, number one, you as a person do not know this is happening, and then a year later, you're hit with a grand jury indictment on structuring, and then you go, oh, yeah, I run a dinosaur park, and all I was doing was putting in transactions on my land purchases and the amusement park that I have. And I have a meager not-for-profit Bible business that, talks to people about God. And of course, I'm talking about Kent Hovind, but he was actually sent to prison for structuring. That's exactly what happened to him. And the worst thing that he did was probably, I think, not register a part of his property for a particular permitting process. But he didn't get sent to jail for that. He got sent to jail for structuring payments into his bank account. Oh. And these are the kind of stories that just I hear about, and then you kind of shudder, and you're like, these people are nuts. And really, Kent was talking about New World Order and creation versus evolution and banking and stuff like that. And he claims, of course, that's why they threw him in jail. But I personally think that guys like Kent, and I've heard multiple stories about this, I think that they're just out for blood, and anybody they don't like, they just dig into and go, well, we're the government. We can take you out with one fell swoop of our pen. So they do it. It's just... Anyways. I don't know if we got sidetracked there, but...
Oh, that's good.
I think if you draw the line at your family and what you want to do with your life, how you want to live your life, how you want to... What legacy do you want to leave to your kids? I think that's really what people should think about. I think if we're not thinking about what we want to do with our kids, then we're truly not really thinking about the future.
But
of course,
yeah, but it's different when it's different when you have God in that, and it's different when you don't. You're talking about two different things here, right?
Yeah. What? Two different things? No, I mean,
I would think so.
I would think that one aids the other, meaning if you are a family and you're looking out for your kids and your family and you don't have God in your life, you're going to definitely make different decisions along the way. But I think ultimately, if you take a serious hard look at your life, you're going to end up making a lot of similar decisions because you want a good legacy for your kids. Now, if you are a family that does believe in God and trust in God, you're going to reach those decisions in a different way. And of course, you have a lifestyle choice. You want to live that way. It's your lifestyle. It's your choice to believe in God and to follow the Bible. Now, I see that aiding your goal. Personally, I think that living a lifestyle with God, reading and living the Bible, going to church to get better grounding in the Bible is something that aids you to lead a better life. I think it would be hard to say that Christians lead a perfect life.
Nobody's perfect, right?
Right. So if you don't have Christ in your life, you're also not going to lead a perfect life. So then I would say that therefore any of the Christian organizations that have sprung up, like Boy Scouts of America, aid your boys into leading a better life. Going to church and going to youth group, having your kids go to youth group, going to summer camp, having your kids go on missions when they're in high school. All of these things lead to a better life for your kids and grow morals around their lives. And then when they grow up, they will have all of those morals to lean back on and make better decisions. If my kids know about the Big Brother system, if they know about chips and insurance scams and banking scams, they can better make decisions, possibly even with their own mortgages, or possibly even with real problems that affect their lives, versus a family that doesn't believe in God. And then, in my opinion, when their kids grow up, I mean, you hear, at least I've heard, of lots of atheist families, or just simply families that don't really follow Christian values. They always say, well, I'm going to let my kids grow up and make their own decisions later. I think that's an extremely naive and narrow view. You know, an atheist might call me narrow vision. They might call me, oh, or you're just a box store Christian. You're just following what your pastor says. Okay, well, I have a response to that. I think that for those families who say that I'm going to let my kids grow up.
Turn right to US 101 South.
Yes. Let their kids grow up and make their own decisions are the ones with a narrow view of life, because their kids are going to grow up with whatever lifestyle they've led. And you could be the most moral atheist family, which now I don't have a large selection of friends that are atheists, so I actually can't say what an atheist moral view is, because I don't have any personal experience with that. So I'm not going to
right to US 101 South.
I'm not going to comment on that. However, I would say that if you're an atheist, you're probably going to public school, because I would think that a public school in this country during this day and age is going to teach pretty much right up the alley of what you're interested in teaching your kids. Or even if you do send them to a private school, it's going to be pretty much along the lines of a public school anyways. And then your kids are getting brainwashed in the way that the government wants you to be in. So your kids are going to grow up with all of that in their heads, and they will not be able to make their own decisions. Okay? So that's why I say it's a narrow view. Because kids, when they grow up and they become adults, will make decisions.
25 minutes to exit 451B at 580 East, Richmond Bridge, Oakland.
They will make decisions on their lifestyle and their point of view. It's always going to be that way. It's always going to be that way. There just simply isn't any other. I mean, kids will simply make decisions on what they know. You know, I mean, certainly, I mean, they'll learn more things when they're adults, but whatever they've been trained over 18 years is pretty much what they're going to come out as.
Reported ahead.
And so if you're going to raise your kids in a particular way, I would say be honest with yourself and don't say to people, don't say, oh, well, I'll let my kids make their own decision about church, or let my kids make their own decision about if they want to be atheists or Christians or something like that when they're grown up. You know.
What do you think about teaching kids about homosexuals and transgender and all that stuff? Is there an age where it's like, okay?
I would have to say that in our society,
as a parent,
yeah,
in your view,
absolutely. So I mean, as our society, in today's society, that is, we have so much input, whether it's by TV or friends, or you go to a movie and hear people talk, or to get inundated with input, okay? So my view is there's no need to go out of your way to talk about such matters. Now, I am not shielding my kids from talking about homosexuals. In fact, I talk about that, I wouldn't say all the time, of course, but I would say that when the situation arises, we talk about racism, we talk about homosexuality, we talk about sex, we talk about girls and boys, we talk about whatever, transgenderism. It's come up in our family discussions that we have around the table, whether you call it for dinner or whatever else.
Please reported ahead.
Oh yes, thank you, Waze. Maybe I should. I didn't even think about this, but since we're recording, I can turn the sound off on that. I talk about stuff with my kids to give them knowledge. I don't try to shield them from the knowledge, but at the same time, I don't feel that I have to go out of my way to somehow train them in like what a homosexual is. Or I guess the newest thing now is that parents are like trying to allow their kids to make their own decisions about what gender they feel they are. So if your girl is playing with a lot of boys' toys, then your girl must be actually a boy, so then you start addressing her as a boy and cutting her hair and making her feel like a boy? No, that's horrible. Even mainline pediatric psychology says that boys are boys and girls are girls, and your gender is what you were born with. And girls can play with boys' toys if there's even, whether you're playing cowboys and Indians or you're, that's a triggering term, of course, now too, right? Or maybe boys are more artistic or something like that, and then all of a sudden they're not really a boy, they have a feminine side. It's like, well, wait a minute, that's not true. I think boys will explore a lot of different things based on their personalities. Girls will also do the same thing. But ultimately, a girl will be feminine based on her God-given abilities, and the same thing with a man will be masculine based on his God-given abilities. And I think what's required is that you have a family. You have a mother and a father training your kids, and then you will then have kids that hopefully turn out fairly normal. It's not always true, of course, right? I'm gonna have to open that window up, I think.
That's okay.
And of course, you see problems in society all the time with kids that don't end up normal, but yet they had a mother and father. But I always think that it goes back to your family parenting. I'd like to say that if your kids turn out a certain way, it's probably based on what you did as a parent. You were either too dominant or too docile, or you weren't giving the right impression about your role as father or mother or whatever. I just think you have to have a good role model, in my opinion. If you're a father, be a role model, be truthful, and be there for your kids. And the good news is that your kids will find their own way. If you're a good role model, a good, solid father figure, then your kids will see that and will turn out in the way they're supposed to. So I don't send my kids to a school that teaches about any type of non-biological topics, or like sexual biology topics such as male and female interactions, or homosexual interactions or something like that, because that's not really biology, right? Biology is about cells splitting and creating life and all that good stuff, all the science, right? Biology is science. Homosexuality is not science. That is a psychology, So if you wanna talk about psychology, talk about psychology, I guess. That's my view. So.
It's an interesting view. Never heard that view, but I like it. Makes sense on that level. People who are not Christians, don't believe that the Bible is true, or don't believe that we came from a man and a woman. Where do they start? If we didn't come from a man and a woman, where do they think we came from?
So even if you have a large percentage of people that are taught and believe that our species didn't originate from Adam and Eve or from a base pair of humans, even if that's not the case, according to your knowledge, you were today born from a male and female interaction, okay? So it doesn't matter all the way back to Adam and Eve, or if you don't believe that, okay, fine. Then so according to your knowledge, at some point, humans evolved. And so at some point you have our current line of humans that evolved in the way our current thousands of years of history have shown that we currently are. Okay, so we have today's human. Well, today's human was birthed by male and female. You can't birth humans with two males, and you can't birth humans from two females. So in order to propagate our species, you have to be birthed by a male and a female human. It's the only way. So it doesn't matter what you think, because if you have a child, and that child is, let's say, adopted, and you happen to be a transgender couple, the transgender couple, quite frankly, are now having kids with, like, the male who used to be female and the female who used to be a male are now birthing kids in reverse and call it transgenderism, is, in my opinion, you're just lying to yourselves in the fact that you're somehow beating science, and you're not.
And that's somehow normal.
No, you're just a male and female, but you call yourselves the reverse. So once again, you have a psychology issue here. Your belief that you're somehow different doesn't change that you're different. So then you have the cases of two women or two men, which obviously they have to adopt. There's no other way to do that. And quite frankly, this whole business about you're two males, so one of the male gives their DNA to a birthing mother, and the mother has their child. So sure, half of that child is now the DNA of one of the fathers, right? So in fact, that child is now literally their child. So that's fine. That's science.
Based on the DNA?
Yeah, based on the DNA. That's he's the father. So let's say you get into a situation like that. Fine. So you have two fathers in your life. Now, what do those two fathers do? Do those two fathers raise that child to believe that two fathers are the best way of living? Or do they teach their child that, no, your two fathers have just decided that amongst them, they thought that was the best decision for them? And that as our child, we're going to raise you that you have choices. If you are going through life and, you know, as they're growing up, you're always presenting them with the same choices that other children have of, let's say, heterosexual couples, then, in my opinion, you're raising that child in the best way you can. Because then that child then can look at his decisions and go, well, I don't have the same feelings that my fathers do because I like this girl over here.
Okay, but are these decisions or are these educated decisions? As a parent,
yeah,
you deal with children. What decisions do you trust your kids with, and at what age do you trust them with? Do you trust them at the age of 9, whether they can drink or whether they decide not to drink? You know what I mean? What TV shows they can watch, especially in this age.
Exactly.
Where
well, that's
social media and cell phones. 5-year-olds have cell phones,
and that's input, right? So that's a whole other topic. I was talking about fathers
I think it's related
and raising
somewhat.
kids. So, but I mean, as far as input goes, that topic, I think, you have to control the input of what your children have all the way through till you no longer have control of their input. Okay? So it's the typical thing. As long as you're in my house, under my roof, and I'm paying for whatever services you're using, then our agreement is that you're going to follow and respect those rules.
So if there's 2 fathers or 2 mothers, obviously that's the rock upon which the children are going to have to lay their foundation on. Unless
that's
they
true, but
disagree with it.
But 2 fathers don't have to go out of their way to make sure that their child grows up in a particular way. I guess meaning they're not forcing their child to be gay or homosexual.
No, but their child is going to go out into the world and see that not everybody has 2 dads or 2 moms. They're going to go back to their 2 dads or 2 moms.
That's right.
And say, is this normal? Are we a normal family? And at that point, the 2 fathers or 2 moms, I would think would have to say, yeah, or they would have to be totally honest and say, no.
That's what I would say. If I was to actually talk to 10 homosexual couples,
Yeah.
and we were in a discussion group and we were talking about this openly, and I was the only straight guy in the room,
Right.
I would say that as a homosexual couple, it would be your responsibility to be honest about the reproductive cycle of this planet. That a male and female is the only true way to reproduce on this planet, and therefore carry on the line of being a human and of this family, quite frankly. So if you have a father and a father, and in order for that child to carry on the line of that family, you know, he has a choice to do the same thing his father did, or go out and find a female to carry on the line. But they have to be honest. I would say you have to be honest to your child at some point, and your child comes back and says, tell me more about why you guys are 2 fathers and I see all these fathers and mothers out there. You say, well, yeah, there's fathers and mothers. That's the way the human race has progressed over thousands of years or millions of years, depending on what your view of life is. And then you say, you know, your father and I, if you're 2 fathers, you would say something like, well, we just chose this because this is how our lives turned out, you know? And so I guess I could flip that. What would I tell my sons, right? My sons come back and say, Dad, I know you and Mom chose to be married, and but I see Johnny's dads, and I wonder, you know, why do you think they're together? I would be honest, I have no idea why they're together. They have their own lives. There were probably inputs in their lives that decided that, they needed to, be homosexual. And 'cause I don't believe in this concept that you have a gay gene or something like that. That there's something about you that makes you gay. I think that what makes you gay is inputs in your life. I think that's been proven, but
You think it's a choice?
it's a choice. Ultimately, it's a choice. Now, you might have an overwhelming response to the input in your life, whatever that was, whether you were abused or you had a hard life or you came from a very restricted family or whatever inputs were put into your life that makes you make the decisions you make, it's still a choice. The reason I know this is because there are more than ample stories that are given by men and women that were used to be homosexual, and they come out and they say, you know what, we led a homosexual life, but through knowledge and learning and reading the Bible, and it usually turns out that the reason you turn away from being a homosexual is that you're hit with an overwhelming urge to really read the Bible and trust God. They come out and to be very honest, they say, boy, the circumstances in my life really, really made me turn down the path of being a homosexual, and now I understand why, and I've put things into my life like structured programs, and whether it's meditation or just support groups or whatever else, to go, you know what, this just simply isn't a sustainable lifestyle for purposes of whether it's procreation or living honestly with yourself. And they come out and they're able to list all of the factors in their life that made the decision for them. And I guess my point to that is that everyone's different, but it always turns out to be a choice. I made a choice to be this way. You weren't born that way. You weren't born making that choice.
That's a great point.
And people are born with Down syndrome, because something happened in the mother's womb. Well, you were born that way. You come out and you're pretty obvious you have Down syndrome. Okay, well, so you're born that way. But even Down syndrome kids are male or female. I mean, you're not born a third gender because you're Down syndrome. If you come out, there's kids that I guess come out, what do you call, some type of physical impairment that makes them androgynous. Usually androgyny means that you come out with both sexual organs, or you have organs that were, I guess, removed during the birthing process. I think that those people, of all people on this planet, would then have the ability to say, in fact, I don't have a gender. Because they were literally born that way. And I think that's fair. And I think that for those people, super, super minute percentage of the population are born with both sex organs, the parents have to choose, in some cases, to make their child male or female, because in a lot of cases, if you go along with your life with dual sex organs, I guess it can screw your body up. Which tells me, even as a layman, I'm like, so you're telling me if you're born with two sex organs, that's actually a deformity, and you'd actually have problems with your sexuality later in life if you're born with two organs, right? So then that tells me, and it's like, well, that's a slam dunk. That tells me, like, the normal thing is that you are born male or female, because that's the most healthy thing for your body. That seems like a slam dunk science to me. I've never been able to had to make those choices, so thank goodness for that. But I can only imagine that you would make a decision based on what you think is the predominant sexual identity of your child at the time. But for goodness sakes, I would say that if a boy was born with male and female sex organs and both were exactly the same, which doesn't make sense to me, but I suppose it could happen. I'm not going to discount science, so if, let's say, it happened and both sex organs were absolutely identical, both in perfect working order, but you had to make a choice because one of them would interfere with the other, then that decision by a parent would be a very grievous decision, in my opinion.
Well, why would they have to make a choice? If they have both, then they have both.
But let's say one of them would actually interfere. Let's say the doctor says, okay, your child is born today, both sex organs, both are in perfectly working order. You've got a full female reproductive system and a full male reproductive system, and they're just next to each other. Okay. So
and then both. That's a special case.
But then they say
these aren't normal cases.
That's correct. Absolutely. I mean, this is obviously a gigantic. This is such a huge.
Right, which I hear all the time from my pro-gay friends.
Exactly.
Right.
You can't redevelop society because 1 in 10 million kids has got two sex organs.
Right.
Okay, you just don't reach. You don't restructure society that way.
Right.
And that's a whole other discussion, I think. But I mean,
and they're also doing those people a disservice by saying, well, you still have to pick one, and it's always pick the gay one. It never pick the straight one. It's always like, well, no, that's a totally separate case that should be treated as something separate, and science should really study why that happens and why this is happening, and we should look at that, I think, just my view, as a totally separate case than from any of the stuff that we're talking about, because it's not fair to those people who do have both. It's not fair for them to pick, to actually choose when they do have both. You know, that should just, from my point of view,
well, if you could be a
separate thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you can be a healthy individual and you have both sex organs, I mean, more power to you, I guess. But what that tells me, of course, if you're one person in a million, or one person, probably not a million, it's probably more like 10 million, but I mean, if you have these very super unique individuals, you're not going to go around restructuring society. We're not going to go in and put in transgender bathrooms in all of the stalls in the United States because of this one person in 10 or 20 or 30 million that comes out this way. Okay? No. That person has to find their own way in life, and unfortunately, they may be called a freak. They may be called, you're abnormal. They may not obviously be able to find a healthy partner or a healthy sexual or a healthy mate relationship because of their super unique biological makeup. And I'm sorry, but that's unfortunate for them. But you are not going to dictate my lifestyle as a heterosexual male, as my family, as me raising 3 male boys. You're not going to dictate my lifestyle because you are different.
Right.
That's my point. Okay? I'll give you the leeway to be your unique individual snowflake that you are, because you really are, in fact. But don't tell me how to live my life.
Right. And they also, that's not something that they choose. A person does not choose to have both male and female.
They did not choose. In fact, that's right.
So
right.
They are a very special case that should not be shunned and should be helped. Yes, we should really focus a little more on that, because they will need help and they will go through these things. But yes, because a lot of people shun them and don't focus on them, or don't even act like they don't exist, it does people. A lot of people that want the gays to be just as normal as everybody else, they use them. These people are being used.
Yes.
That's the way I feel.
No, absolutely. In fact, I've had the opportunity to talk to many gay couples, and they don't want to bring attention to themselves. They just want to live their lives like everybody else does.
Right.
Okay, but they're forced into presenting who they are because they are gay. So, at some point, they're going to go out and they're going to be a gay couple, and they have to address the situation. The best way, in my opinion, to address homosexuality is not to address it. Not that we discount it, and not that we shun those people, not that we go out of our way to make their lives difficult, but we also don't go out of our ways to make their lives easier for them. Just because of who they are. That's what we're doing in society today. We are going out of our way as society to somehow put these special individuals that have chosen their lifestyle, to somehow make them a special class of society.
An upper class.
A privileged class. Now, whether it's a good privilege or just a privilege, it's still privilege. Okay? Transgenderism is turned into a privilege. You have schools and states that are going out of their way to, like, oh my gosh, we have to somehow make transgenders feel, accepted. Who says that we have to make people feel accepted?
I don't feel accepted. And I'm not trying.
As a society, we should strive to not make people feel unaccepted. There's a total difference to that. You don't go out of your way to make somebody feel accepted. You want to go out of your way to simply not purposefully make them feel like they're different. Gay couple walks into my restaurant and I go, oh my God, you guys are gay, get out of here. I have just made them feel a couple different emotions. Made them feel bad. If there's a bunch of people around, they might feel embarrassed. And then all of a sudden, they're going to be pissed. And they're going to go, you can't talk to me that way. And I go, well, you're in my private restaurant. I can make you feel whatever way I want. And that just turns me into a jerk. And that's what I'm saying.
But on the other side, too, you don't want them to walk in and you're like, oh, hey, you're like, you give them.
Oh yeah, we'll give you a special table because you're our transgender, you're our homosexual couple that
you're our token.
You're our token couple, and in my opinion, I think that gays and lesbians and transgenders should go. I'm not going to put up with this. I'm not going to be some token couple for these reasons. That's not why I'm who I am.
It's a very complicated issue.
It's like whatever,
should be treated as a very complicated thing, not as a cut and dry.
No, I think it all comes back to basic human value. Just treat everybody the same. Give them the opportunity to stand on their own merits. Okay, I've actually known gay couples, okay? And I never had to treat them differently. At least in my experience, I never had to treat them differently because they never asked me to treat them differently. They never asked me to look at them differently. Okay? In whatever way I was interacting with them at work or in my just daily life, I would deal with them in the capacity of the way I would, whatever, if they were a checkout stand person or they were, delivering my groceries from Amazon or whatever, I would just deal with them in the way I would deal with anybody. And if you go out of your way to make me feel like I need to treat you differently, then guess what? I will be treating you differently. Because at that point now you're telling me how I need to react with you. I think that leads itself into this Jordan Peterson guy from Canada who talks about this very issue. Jordan Peterson was recently in a court trial about how British Columbia is trying to pass a law that says if you are a transgender person, it applies to everybody, but the example is transgender, and you want to be known as a he or a she or a they, that you're required to address them by the name that they chose. So if I say address somebody by saying, how would you address somebody by he or she? Maybe possibly, like if I'm talking to a third person and I say, oh, this is Joe, he wants you to give him a cup of coffee, or whatever the thing might be. And then Joe comes back and says, oh, you know something, Sean, actually, I'm transgender, so I want you to refer to me as they. And then that's kind of forcing my hand to say, so you want me to now say, hey, Joe, they want you to give you a cup of coffee. And I'm like, no, thank you. I don't actually play pronouns that way. I'm going to address people as they if there's multiple people over there. And then let's say Joe goes, yeah, that doesn't work for me. I'm going to go ahead and call the police and actually sue you because you're not addressing me by the pronoun that I have been requested to. Does that sound weird to you?
Yeah.
I'm just like...
Yeah,
so Jordan Peterson is like, yeah, that sounds weird to me. I'm not going to take this. So he actually goes to British Columbia court and says, yeah, this is ridiculous. And so I kind of thought that was ridiculous too. No one's going to be sitting there saying that I have to address them as they when I see somebody like a he or she there. And let's say the person that I'm speaking to is if they were lesbian, they would probably want to be called a she, I would think. I think this comes into mainly a transgender case. So where you have a person that looks like a female, but really they were male, so I address them as he because the person, I knew that person as a he before, okay? Or I just happen to know that they're a male, and I keep calling them he. So that's a pronoun that I don't want to be called by anymore. Or maybe they just look male to me, but maybe they're trying to say that they're female. So I would call somebody by the way I see it.
Right.
This is a very complex situation because I would have to say that in the normal course of my life, if I see someone and they look female to me, then I'm going to address them as such. I've never gotten into that situation personally yet, so I can't say that I've had to make that choice yet.
It's a tough one.
But I would have to say that if that came upon, if the person looked like a female and they wanted to be addressed as a female, I would address them as such, regardless of what their sexual identity is, because quite frankly, why is that my business?
Well, okay.
Right?
Okay.
I think. I mean, I might be wrong, but I don't know. Because, like I said, I haven't made that choice. If a person looks male, and he speaks male, and he wants to be addressed as a male, but really they were born female, once again, why do I care? Because I'm not going to ask them to pull their pants down and show me.
So that's like a Bruce Jenner thing. Like...
Well, Bruce Jenner, we know that he was male.
But now he wants to be...
called female. Right. Would I address him as female? No, I would probably choose not even to address him at all. I would just say, you know what, I just don't agree with your situation. So,
okay.
And I think that I should be allowed. I don't
You're
think.
Free to, sure.
Why do I have to be called homophobic to say to Bruce Jenner's face, you know, I used to know you as Bruce Jenner, and now you're something else. Okay, fair enough. You've legally changed your name, so I need to update my mental files. You're no longer called Bruce anymore. Fair enough. Let's say I'm the guy's banker, you know, and I have to start addressing him as a female now. That wouldn't be a big stretch for me. I mean, the guy has gone through a sex change. He's taken hormones. This guy has decided that he wants to be female, and now he's starting to look female, and it's kind of like, you know, that's your own situation, dude. I mean...
There's nothing natural about it.
There's nothing natural about it, but look, you want me to start calling you by your new name? You've legally changed it. I know you've legally changed it because the bank is allowing you to use it. I'll call you by your new name. That's no problem. I don't have a problem with that.
I have a problem with that.
You have a problem with
I
that?
have a problem
Okay.
with it. Yeah.
So...
But I have a problem with calling people doctor. I have a problem with calling, you know, if somebody says, I want to be addressed as doctor.
Oh, yeah?
I will not call you doctor.
Oh, you're kidding?
No, I won't.
Oh, see, so this is a fundamental issue with the way you choose to name people. So I would have a direct response to that, though.
Okay.
A doctor has gone through an awful lot of trouble to get the title of doctor.
But it's just
he
title.
Earned the title
of
doctor.
It's just a fake title.
It's not a fake title.
They earned it when they've actually been a doctor and helped people. That makes them a doctor. If you have to be addressed as a doctor, it makes me wonder if you're really that good of a doctor.
You mean like if you're going out with a girl
and that girl is mine? And I don't need to tell you that she is mine. You're gonna know she's mine. She's gonna tell you she's mine. I don't need to tell you that I'm a doctor. You're gonna know that I'm a doctor. I'm gonna show you I'm a doctor.
But okay, maybe this is not a good example because if you have a potential girlfriend, someone you're going out with, very intimate situation, they're not going to require you to call them Dr. Susie.
Correct.
Because you have an intimate relationship with them. Or even your wife, let's say. I mean, let's say you have a wife and then she becomes a doctor. I doubt that your wife is now going to require you to call her Dr. Susie. Because you're already married.
Right, but then so why would you require a complete stranger that doesn't know you? Why would they have to call you doctor?
So I think, okay, I'll give that to you. If you're in a situation where you're out to dinner with a couple and you don't know the other person's a doctor and you address them as Joe, and somebody says, oh no, you need to address him as Dr. Joe. Or if that guy himself says, you know what, I prefer to be called by my title Dr. Joe. You're right. I think that would be a little awkward. Because he's not wearing a lab coat, or he's not currently servicing your teeth, or he's currently not performing some medical procedure on you.
He's not my doctor.
He's not your doctor. So you're just going to call him Joe, right?
Yeah, and the only reason I would call my doctor Dr. Chu is because I don't know his first name.
Interesting, okay.
But if I knew his first name and I saw him out on the street, I wouldn't call him Dr. Chu. I'd call him Mr. Chu.
See, so I think that's where maybe... I think that's... So, in my head, that's what distinguishes someone's pronoun from a surname, though, because... if you want to be called Dr. Ken Hovind, and you've gone through 8 years of medical school, and you've earned that title as doctor, then you want people to officially address you as doctor. That doesn't mean that in the course of casual conversation, you have to call him Dr. Ken all the time.
Right.
He probably just wants you to call him Ken.
Right.
Okay? But as long as you know he's a doctor, then maybe if you're referring to him, you might say, hey, Dr. Kent Hovind is somebody I would recommend for you to have your kidneys.
So it's all about
fixed.
the context, proper context.
I feel it's
I
context.
gotcha.
Okay, so
I see that. But see,
if I want to throw a wrench in your...
No. And the only other thing is, this is a true story that happened to me in high school.
Okay.
And this person was not a doctor a medical doctor.
Yes.
It was just she had a doctorate or something. She was like one of the therapists, a counselor.
Well, you can get a 6-year degree as a psychologist.
But they're not a doctor. I don't see them as a doctor.
They are, because they're a psychiatrist. They can actually prescribe medicine.
Well, then that's my fault for my understanding of what a doctor is. Because
Yes.
when I think of a doctor, I think of a medical person, someone who's going to help me. You know.
Okay. Well, hold on a second. Now, if I can be absolutely blunt, that's your ignorance.
True.
Not that. So I would postulate.
But where's the ignorance in wanting to be called doctor? There's no ignorance there.
Did you know? Did you know that you can be a doctor of English literature?
You could be Dr. Dre and,
No,
and
Dr.
have your own recording studio. That doesn't make you a doctor.
No, Dr. Dre is not a doctor, okay? At least I don't think he is.
Well, I mean, you have to address him as Dr. Dre.
No,
Do you ever call Dr. Dre? Has anybody else ever called Dr. Dre
That's
anything
his professional
but Dr.
name.
Dre?
But that's his professional name. You're right. Okay.
Okay, Dr. Pepper. You're not going to say Pepper. You're not going to say Mr. Pepper. It's Dr. Pepper. It's just a name. That's my point. It's all.
You're right. So Dr.
stupid
Dre
names.
and Dr. Pepper are professional names. A doctor of English literature simply means that they, and you can look this up, of course, that means that they have earned a doctorate in
But they're not doctors.
that. Yes, they are.
They are.
Once again, the limited view that you're sharing with me right now is of a medical doctor being a doctor.
Well, it's of having experience with both and understanding the different. There's a clear difference from a counselor, from a therapist, which I've had.
That's true.
Than a medical doctor.
Yeah, that's correct. No, you're absolutely correct. Right?
Big difference.
So
but to lump them in the same thing,
they're not though.
Does not seem fair.
A psychologist and a therapist are not doctors, and that they want.
But they want to be called.
They
doctor.
will not be called doctors. In fact, if
I've seen it on my vice principal's.
then you. Okay.
On her label, she told me specifically she would not address me unless I called her doctor.
So if if you're concerned about that,
the extreme.
then,
well, I don't care.
Then what you have to do is you have to look on the wall and you find out where their degree is. Did they actually earn a doctorate?
I don't care. I'm not calling them a doctor no matter who they are. But so I guess the point is mute. But
all right.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't. I should not have to address you as. I'll call you Mr., I'll call you Miss, I'll call you Sir, I'll call you Ma'am.
So I recently went through this information because I was actually looking up some real information about an osteopath versus a MD, okay? And in that research, it didn't take me very long. It was an hour's worth of research. I mean, Wikipedia has all this information. So an osteopath is slightly different than an MD because an osteopath has gone through all of the hours that an MD did, except an osteopath has added herbal medicine onto their list of responsibilities.
But they're not a medical doctor.
They are a medical doctor.
So they went through medical school.
A medical doctor and an osteopath are both actual doctors, and the osteopath went through everything an MD did, but added herbal medicine. But he doesn't call himself an MD because he has added osteopath training, so now he's called a doctor of osteopath medicine.
But he's not a doctor, MD.
He is. He can do everything an MD does legally because he has all of the exact training, but his peers would call him an osteopath because he's added that specialized training. Okay? A chiropractor, and this was part of my research,
Right.
a chiropractor is not an MD because they have not gone through emergency medicine
Okay.
or herbal medicine, okay? So what separates an MD from a chiropractor is emergency medicine. I'm going in the wrong lane, aren't I?
To get over to the.
Okay, so this guy doesn't want to let me in.
Need to get over to 580.
Okay, I'm going to be good here because there's a really slow truck up here, so this is great.
Let's watch out for this guy.
Okay, this guy really is going slow. Let's see here. Okay, TUV bug.
I need to get over.
This guy wants to get over one more time, so I think I'm going to have some chance here. I'm going to put my blinker on so I know I want to get over. And oh, this white truck is going to let me in here. This is very cool. All right, we're in the right lane now. Okay, so a chiropractor will not ever call themselves a doctor because they haven't gone through the final doctoral training that MDs do, but they have taken all of the same medical courses up to that medical doctor portion of the doctoral degree, okay? I don't think you can get a doctorate in chiropractic medicine. It's just that's not the way they work it.
So it's a
you can be a doctor and a
doctorate in
chiropractor.
Medical.
What's that?
So for a medical doctor, it's just like a doctorate in medical.
Right. So let's say you're a medical doctor. Let's say
Do you have a doctorate?
you
in medical
can.
something.
When you're a medical doctor, you always specialize in something. But
So what
you're
is your
still a
doctorate?
medical doctor, though. Okay.
So your doctorate is in medicine.
You are going to have a doctoral degree in medicine. So you're an MD, you're a medical doctor, right? Okay.
But they never say you're a psychiatric doctor or you're a foot doctor, even though you are. You know, you're a skin doctor, right? Or is that different? Is that a whole other side note?
In the case of being called a medical doctor versus a psychiatrist,
Yeah.
they have in the industry, once again, not my choice, they've decided that a psychiatrist is called a psychiatrist. They're not called a medical doctor because they want to distinguish themselves as a psychiatrist.
But does a psychiatrist have to go through the same thing that a
All
medical
of the
doctor
same,
would?
all of it, all of it. Okay, so oh, you know what it is? The psychiatrists also don't go through emergency medicine.
So that's not the same. But and
That's all that means. So you have a medical doctor has to go through an extra 2 years of emergency medicine and then become an MD, right?
okay.
But if you're a psychiatrist, you're also not licensed to medically work on someone. You're only licensed to dispense drugs.
Okay.
Okay?
Gotcha.
So you're right. They're not a medical doctor. They're not an MD. They're a psychiatrist. But they've still gone through a doctoral program. And they've still done all the hours as a medical doctor, just not that emergency medicine thing, right? So it's interesting, though, that you'd have someone say they're not going to talk to you unless you address them as doctor.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
now that's interesting to me. I mean,
crazy.
I do call my doctor Dr. Kohal. He does happen to be a medical doctor, but
But if you didn't call him doctor, you think he would take offense?
I don't know. I don't think I don't even know his first name, and I think that's the same thing. That's the same thing with you. If I looked at his certificate and started calling him Ken, and
That kind of be weird.
would
Because
he
he's
look at
your
me and
doctor.
go, "He's my doctor"?
It's your doctor. Yeah.
So that has nothing to do with titles, but you were discussing titles, and if you
Right,
should
right.
call somebody, I would think that you should be allowed to call people by their first name, unless like they're your doctor, and then if you're not calling them doctor, but they really are your doctor, then that would tell me that you have a trust issue with them, because if let's say you have to go to a psychiatrist for whatever reason. Maybe you have a brain injury. I mean, people go to psychiatrists because they have brain injuries, and they have to be prescribed medicine, and maybe you have to have follow-up calls. So maybe you have to go to a psychiatrist for some reason. And if you're not calling that person Dr. Olivia because you don't believe in calling them a doctor, I think that says that you have a trust issue with them. That's just my opinion,
Yeah.
but I mean,
well, yeah, I don't.
but it's interesting when you start talking about pronouns and stuff. I think it's highly complex. I think that where I draw the line, I think, is at the law once again. If the government came out and said, if you don't call a doctor by their title, and if you refuse to call a doctor by their title, therefore we're forcing you to use a particular pronoun for somebody, right? Then you can actually be fined and thrown in jail for that action. I would definitely cross the line there. I mean, that's, in my opinion, that is so far beyond the line that I would say that you would have to fight for that, right? Because no government should be forcing me to call somebody a doctor if I don't want to call them a doctor. I think that's your personal issue with them, right? And that's where the pronoun thing comes in. Is where British Columbia was saying, we're going to force you such that if you don't call somebody by their pronoun and they then complain to the authorities, then the authorities have some mechanism to put penalties on you. So if you're in academia and you don't call somebody by their proper pronoun, they could just simply kick you out of the college, therefore destroying your tenure or destroying your livelihood. That to me seems very brutal and not at all what the law should be there for. That's where I draw the line. I suppose there's so many thousands of different situations out there that it'd be impossible to think of them all.
Oh, sure.
So then I have to be very simple and say, I draw the line when somebody forces me to do something that I'm not comfortable with. When I'm given the free choice to deal with it, at least, I think I should have that choice, right?
You should.
It's like, if I come upon a stop sign and I don't stop at the stop sign and I ram into somebody, I've taken that personal responsibility. I've blown through a stop sign. I've now just hit somebody. Therefore, I can't use the description, oh, well, I don't believe in stop signs. Okay, fair enough. I don't believe in stop signs. The judge goes, all right, fair enough. You don't believe in stop signs, but you still hit the guy, and you did break the law. So therefore, you're responsible. So I don't know where what are you going to do about that, right? It's like, you hit the guy. That's where the personal responsibility comes in. I mean, any libertarian is going to start talking about personal responsibility, right?
Yeah, and that's where you start saying, okay, now you need insurance. Now we need to come down on you. I don't like the fact that, it's like, we all have to have insurance. We all have to have these things because a few people messed up. Why should we all be punished and have to have a driver's license, have to have all of these things that they've never had?
No, that's all government overreach, in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I mean, if you hit somebody and you don't have insurance, then
it's a separate issue.
Then the way that used to be covered is you either took care of that with the person that you hit, or you're going to wind up in court because that person's going to sue you and go, this person hit me, and then you have a trial and the judge is going to figure out the evidence, or even if it goes to a jury, if you have to have that. With insurance, or mandated insurance now, they've made it a government action instead of a personal action.
Right.
And that's where I draw the line. So if I hit someone without insurance, it would be my responsibility to take care of that situation.
Right.
If I choose not to take responsibility for it, somebody else might do that for me. They might sue me and make me take responsibility.
Right.
That's the way it's always been. Until government got involved with these types of scenarios or personal situations,
Right.
everyone would always take care of it based on their merit. Oh, my name is Dr. Ken. I just hit you. Somebody says, well, who are you? Well, I'm Dr. Ken. I work at this... I work down at this medical facility. You can trust me because I have merit.
Because I'm his doctor over here.
All right. But I want you to call me doctor. No, I'm just kidding. So
don't call me Dr. Case, I win.
So anyways, so he goes, well, based on my merits as a person and that I have a business, you can trust me. That's the way people used to interact with people. And nowadays, everything is so impersonal that we've made the government kind of vet us out for our merit. The last thing that I want is the government vetting out my merit, right? And this is kind of the space that they've gotten into with marriage licenses and driver's licenses, and all of this stuff is all now government controlled. And that's
marriage. Government cannot control marriage. I don't care what they do.
Absolutely, right? So this is the thing. These are my lines. I don't know. I was tracking that whole baking a cake scenario, and there was just a new court decision brought down about how business owners are no longer forced to make decisions that are antithetical to their business. I believe that was a Supreme Court decision. I still need to follow that up. It's very brand new. And but throughout that whole thing that was happening up in Oregon, I was like, somebody is not representing this business owner properly. They actually lost their bakery because of this situation. And I'm like, I don't see how that could happen, because something must have really horribly gone wrong, because when you own a business, you are allowed to tell people, I cannot service you because it would, in California at least, you could say for any reason you can deny service to somebody. In fact, that's a law in California. In a business, you can simply refuse service to anyone, and there's no legal ramifications for it. Now in Oregon, if they don't have that law, then there is, at least on the books, there's going to be a business ruling where a business would not have to make a decision that would be antithetical to their business practice. So let's say you're a bakery and you're in the business of making cakes for people. And let's say you make wedding cakes. Okay, so you're already in the business of making a wedding cake. And a gay couple comes up to you and says, we want you to make a wedding cake for us. Okay. Christian couple. All they have to do is say, you know what? We're Christian and we don't believe in the gay lifestyle. I've never made a cake for a gay couple before. I don't feel comfortable doing it. And I think it would really, hurt my reputation if I made you a cake, because I don't think I can make you a cake properly. So I'm going to simply have to refuse you service because I have a professional standard to uphold, and I don't think I could do a good service to you. And then the couple might come back and say, well, I don't care, we don't have many needs, we just need to have you make us a generic cake. And then you come back and you say, well, we're professional, we don't just make generic cakes, we make very personalized individual wedding cakes. That's the way we do it. In fact, any wedding cake designer will tell you that. They don't go out and make generic wedding cakes, So if, let's say you're that baker and they come to you and say that, then you say to them, oh, they're really insistent as a gay couple. This gay couple, they really want us to make a wedding cake. So you say, okay, I'll tell you what. We actually make wedding cakes all the time, and some of them don't always get accepted. So we have a surplus of anywhere between 2 to 6 wedding cakes on hand at any given time, and you can choose from one of those wedding cakes. I'll be happy to sell you a wedding cake. I have no problem in selling you stuff. In fact,
almost like Safeway, walking into
this is
pre-bought.
Yep. In fact, this baker, already had a precedent with this couple because that couple came into their bakery all the time to buy stuff, and they will happily sell a gay couple anything that's in the store. They're just simply doing a purchase. This already came out in the court case.
Interesting.
This already came out in the court case.
Well, that could be why they lost, is because they was. Even though it doesn't make any sense, because how would they know that?
Well, why I don't know much.
Yeah,
I read the court case, and I'm still trying to figure out, this lawyer must be extremely bad. Because then the couple goes, you can pick from any of these cakes, and we'll happily, put your name on it.
But they didn't want to make a custom cake.
Exactly.
But had they ever made anything, had they ever made anything custom?
In fact, this came out in the court case. They say, we make specialized, custom cakes for couples all the time, but we know who they are because they go through an interview process, and we make them a custom cake based on our knowledge of heterosexual couples. Okay? And any wedding cake designer is going to say the same thing. So you get to that situation where the gay couple goes, so you've given us the option to pick from one of your cakes that has been pre-made but not chosen, and you're going to put our name on it. And they still refuse that. And then, as a business owner, you're like, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I don't understand what's going on. I'm the business owner, and I'm saying I'm uncomfortable with working with you in this capacity because I don't feel I can give a good job to you. And they're still insistent. Then, obviously, red flags must go up. And you're like, these people are really insistent. I don't understand what's going on. There's like a freaking bakery right down the street that I know will bake them a gay wedding cake.
Well, it sounds like they were looking for a lawsuit.
And then you're like, so you're saying you won't take my recommendation to another bakery? And they're like, no, we want you to do it. So if I was in that situation as a baker, I would like...
That's where they should have won the case. Huh?
Yeah, right? And I was like, so as a baker, all my red flags would have went up at that point, and I would have went, well, this is interesting. Tell you what, I will deliver you a wedding cake. You come back next Saturday, and I will set up what you need, and it's going to cost you, $2,000. And the couple looks at you and goes, but we see all kinds of wedding cakes in here, and they only cost $500. And I go, well, yeah, because you're wanting me to make you a wedding cake. I've already told you that I don't feel comfortable with designing something for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out and I'm going to hire a gay wedding baker for you that I know personally that bakes all kinds of gay wedding cakes that are beautiful wedding cakes. And I'm going to hire them as a subcontractor to do the work for you. So you're going to do business with me. I will guarantee all the work as your vendor, and I will make sure that your whole experience goes off the way you want. Okay, because I'm happy to make an extra buck off you, as any capitalist would. Why didn't they say that? Because that also would be, it's kind of like, you're in the business of making a buck. I don't have to deal with you. In fact, I've already spent enough time dealing with you because you're already not getting the hint that I don't feel comfortable with this transaction.
Damn,
I'm like, what the heck? This seems to me like a freaking slam dunk. It's like, I'm not discriminating against you. In fact, I've already told you 4 different ways that I can get you a cake the way you want.
I don't know, man.
I'm not discriminating against you.
The way that you're painting it, I need to do more research on this, but I almost would agree with the gay couple on this.
You would agree with the gay couple?
I think so.
Where have I discriminated against you? It's a discrimination case, by the way. This is not.
I would say
this is not a business case. It has nothing to do with business.
So let's say I'm one more. Let's say I'm in the clothing business, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm in the business of making clothing.
Making clothing?
Yeah, I don't care who I make it for. If
That's
I make
right.
it for gay people or not.
You mean custom clothing fitted for them?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm making custom cakes, I mean, that's a difficult one for me. I really need to do more research. I need to pray about and think about it.
So you're saying
more.
that if there is a straight
unless I
clothing...
say that I do not service gay people, unless I say that I only make cakes, I only make wedding cakes for...
Now, hang on a second. Now, there's a difference here. I know you just brought up clothing, but maybe you can come up with a better example. But with clothing, that's a personal, per-person selection.
Well, custom.
So if you have a homosexual man come in for a fitting, and you are not comfortable with servicing that or making the clothes for that homosexual man, then in my opinion, that would be no different than saying a black man walks in and you're not willing to service the clothing for the black man. Okay? That would be, in my opinion, that's the same thing.
No, because one is sexual and the other one isn't.
But
one is based on a sexual...
So only if that homosexual man starts making advances towards you.
No, it's just I
then there would be no uncomfortableness, right?
I'm not comfortable around homosexuals. Let's say, okay, I don't care. If,
okay, so then that goes back. Okay, fine. Then that goes back to the California rule of being able to refuse service to anybody.
Right.
So then you would then, once you find out the guy is homosexual, you would go.
And that's not a.
I'm sorry, but I don't really feel comfortable servicing homosexuals for whatever reason. I just.
Well, shit,
I have a history with it.
The whole tailoring thing is kind of weird. I don't want to touch any other guy. I don't care if they're straight or gay or whatever.
Well, then you wouldn't be in that business.
So
right?
I wouldn't be in that business.
All right,
so that it's a bad example.
We're talking hypothetical anyways, right?
Right.
So if you're in the business of being a tailor, though, and you don't want to service homosexuals, then in my opinion, what you're doing is you're opening yourself up for ridicule.
But for custom...
I don't believe, though, that you should be sent to court, though. Okay, don't get me wrong here. The government should not interfere.
But let's say I'm a pastor. I am not going to marry two men or two women, and maybe...
Oh, there's pastors got in trouble for that, too.
I don't agree with that, because everything that I would do would be based on the Bible.
But that's the same situation as a bakery.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
now one is religious, the other is making a personal custom cake.
But they're basing
for their wedding experience.
It's on because they're Christians, I'm guessing.
They were Christians. They are Christians.
So that's probably okay. So now I see. Okay.
The bakery were Christians.
So it really isn't about
no, but
I mean, in the whole legal system, yeah, blah blah blah. But what it really comes down to is that they recognize that marriage is not between a man and a man. It's not between a woman and a woman, correct?
But you don't fight that in court. If you fight that in court, you lose, and that's what they did. They lost.
I mean,
because you don't fight it that way. You fight it.
Don't you swear on the Bible when you enter court? I mean, isn't it all
as a Christian, though? As a Christian, you're not going to then force the government, therefore your fellow people, to follow your principles once again, okay?
Isn't that vice versa, though, too? Then the government shouldn't force me because I am the government.
Absolutely, so, I agree with that. That's why I just said that I don't think that the government should not be in the business.
No, yeah.
The government...
You're right.
Which one is your place?
Up here, this blue. No, you're totally right.
One more up?
Yeah, this blue.
Oh, right as we go down the hill right here, right?
If there's a space.
Yeah, so I just do this number like this, right?
Well, this is the craziest thing. This is my company.
What's that?
The Berkshire. That's my company. They're selling the house next to mine. It's so funny.
That's funny.
But no. Okay, coming from that, yeah, I totally see. My example was bad and had nothing.
So then, yeah, so that's the only thing I say with the bakery is that based on business, what had happened is the court case turned into how the Christian couple was discriminating against the gay couple
which is not really true.
Okay, exactly. So that's why I'm saying that it turned into a discrimination case. So the lawyer for the Christian couple was it was a bad lawyer decision.
Right.
They never should have accepted the case. They should have definitely fought it
I see what
on
you're saying.
not being discrimination. They should have fought it on a business doing business with a couple.
Got it.
And